Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 4 of our series. My name is Matt. I'm the youth pastor here at Glad Tidings Church, and I want to thank you guys for tuning in with us today. Hope you enjoy the worship. Hope you enjoy the lesson, and if you think what I say afterwards is okay too, that'd be cool. But if not, that's also cool. All right. See you in a bit.
darkest nights. You are close like so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Oh, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Oh, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Oh, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I'm surrendered now. I give you everything. Oh, your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so good. With every breath that I am able, I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
So, when you don't know how to do something, how to fix something, or how something works, what do? Ask a teacher? Ask your parents? Ask your friends? Ask someone you really know and trust? No! You go to the internet and ask some randos. But I'm not talking about creeps here, I hope. No, I mean the people of the internet! You know, those people who make how-to videos. Because chances are, if you're trying to figure out something, someone on the internet has already figured it out for you. Things like, how do I unsend a text? No. How do I do a winged eyeliner? How do I get rid of the zit by Friday night? How do I get out of gym class? How do I screen cap Snapchat without getting caught? They'll never know. But then there are things in life that don't have an easy fix, that don't have a simple solution, that don't have a how-to video. Things like what to do when you have problems with family, or when it seems like you have no control in your life, or what to do when someone has done something to you. I mean, clearly, they gotta go. The truth is, there's a lot of life that doesn't have a solution you can just find online. So how do you know what to do when you don't know what to do?
One of my all-time favorite movies is Kung Fu Panda. Am I right or am I right? Okay, you may have watched that as a kid. It's not just a great movie, it's a great trilogy. And one of the things that makes it so great is Po, played by Jack Black. Po is awesome. In fact, for a lot of us, that's probably one of the reasons why we love some of our favorite movies, is because of how much we like the main characters. Producers create characters that you and I can get attached to, and a lot of times by giving us a deeper look into both the good and the bad parts of their life. And when we can see both of those things, it helps us feel for them. It makes us care about what happens to them, and it helps us like them so much more. And it's because we realize that, you know, they're like us. They're not perfect, and their life isn't either. And that's why I love Po, okay? See, movies often show us some of what happens in a character's life by creating what they call a backstory, which is a way of letting us know some of the things that may have happened to the main character before we get to the current moment. For example, maybe a movie centers around a dad saving his daughter, but the backstory shows us that their relationship had a lot of brokenness in the past. Or maybe the movie centers around a superhero defeating his greatest enemy, but we discover in the backstory that they used to be great friends before something divided their relationship. See, understanding the backstory helps make a story more complex to us, and more interesting to us, and more compelling to us. But sometimes introducing these things can seem kind of random. Like when the dad is in the middle of a chase to find his daughter's kidnappers, and suddenly the movie flashes back to a scene where he and his daughter are arguing in the kitchen. You want to be like, wait a minute, like what? Like what does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with what's going on right now? Then as the movie goes on, it all starts to connect and make sense. There was something more going on with that fight in the kitchen. See, we see or have these moments when we're watching a movie, but chances are that you've also felt that way just living your own life. Like there are moments in our real life stories that make us ask the same questions because we get a plot twist, because there's conflict going on, because something hits us out of nowhere and we're like, what's happening? Like, what is the point of me going through this? We're talking about difficulties. We're talking about pain and struggle and problems, the things that will be a part of our backstory one day. But as for now, they're in our current story. For some of you, they're in your story right now. And when we're in the middle of them, they make us feel overwhelmed, powerless, and sometimes even make us want to just give up entirely. And in this series, What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do, which I will give you is a long title, we've been talking about exactly what the title suggests. What to do when you and I do not know what to do. And today we are talking about what to do with our difficulties, our pain, and our struggles. And maybe more than anything else, these things can leave us not knowing what to do. But before we can even ask the question, what do I do? We often ask ourselves just why in general? Why is this happening to me? Why am I going through this? Why is this happening right now? Just like a movie that flashes back to a scene that doesn't seem to make any sense at the moment, difficulties can make us feel the same way. Difficulties, they often feel random. Sometimes they feel pointless or feel completely unnecessary. Sometimes we see the point after the fact when it's part of our backstory, but we don't see it right now. For example, maybe you have a broken friendship, but looking back, you realize that the friendship, well, it led you to make some bad decisions. In fact, you may not even have liked that version of yourself very much when you were in that friendship. So even though it felt bad at the time, you're now actually glad that it happened. Sometimes we even see the point in the moment while the difficulties are actually happening. For example, maybe you found yourself struggling in a class and it was on you. You weren't putting in the effort. You got called out by your teacher and all of a sudden there was a lot of heat on you to get your grade up in that class. So even though it wasn't fun, you knew having someone else tell you what you already knew was what you needed. So sometimes we see it looking back, sometimes we see it in the moment, but most of the time things that don't feel good just seem pointless. Like if your mom or dad loses their job and that means your family has less money, which means you can't buy some of the things you're used to buying, or your parents are having a hard time making ends meet and life for your family gets way harder. It's like, why? What is the point of that? I mean, there could be a million examples of this, but the point is we've all had an experience that hurts and feels pointless in the moment. Whether it was not making a team, not getting the part in the musical, going through drama with friends or family, we've all asked ourselves, why me, when we go through these things? And if you're like me, there's usually not many good answers in the moment. And what's worse, in real life, unlike the movies, our difficult circumstances usually don't get a pretty bow tied on them as we walk through them. It's not like the credits roll and everybody's happy and everyone lives happily ever after. It doesn't always work like that in real life. The outcome may not turn out how we want them to. And in those times, it can be really difficult for us to see any point behind our pain, to find hope despite the hurt, or to find the determination to keep going despite the difficulties. But here's the good news. When we find life confusing or difficult, we can actually learn what we can do by looking at people who have handled similar situations. That's actually an incredible tool for us when we're in the middle of difficulties. And that, my friends, brings us back to the life of Joseph. See, we've been looking at some events in Joseph's life. The account of his journey is found in the Old Testament of the Bible, which basically means he lived before Jesus walked the earth. And here's a recap. Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers. He was taken to a foreign land, which was Egypt, where he was forced to work for a high-powered official. Then he was falsely accused of doing something he didn't do and was thrown into prison. Okay, so from free man to slave to prisoner. If anyone had earned the right to ask, What is the point? Why is all of this happening to me? It was Joseph. And that's where we pick up. Joseph is in jail for a crime he didn't commit, and in jail he makes some new friends. Check it out. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh, who was the king of Egypt, was angry with his two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the same prison where Joseph was confined. So Pharaoh is the boss of all of Egypt. If he got mad at you and wanted you thrown into prison, that's where you'd go, even if you hadn't done anything wrong or illegal. And that's what happened to these two guys. They were thrown into prison with Joseph. The story continues. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker of the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he saw that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's officials who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, "Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." Okay, so there is a lot happening here. Remember, Joseph is in prison for a crime he didn't commit, and even in this really difficult situation, Joseph continues to honor God. The men told Joseph their dreams, and with God's help, Joseph told them what they meant. And then what Joseph said would happen actually happened. Based on the dream the chief cupbearer had, Joseph said that he would be restored to a favorable position, and he was. As for the chief baker, Joseph said he would not have the same luck, and he didn't. So listen, these stories are like kind of wild. They're out there. If you want to know more, you'll have to read the whole story for yourself because it's fascinating and it's awesome. But you would think, given what Joseph had done to help the cupbearer out, it would have made some sense for the cupbearer to speak up and say, "Thank you, Mr. Pharaoh, for restoring my position. I just want you to know that I was locked up with this guy who interpreted my dream to perfection. I know you have dreams that you need interpreted from time to time, so you may want to think about getting this dude on staff ASAP." But that's not what happens. The story tells us the cupbearer forgot about Joseph altogether. He got out of jail and he went on with his life. Ouch, okay? But over time, as Joseph was waiting in jail for his friend to remember him, he realized that not only did his friend forget him, what he did to help his friend didn't help his situation at all. I'm sure he was tempted to wonder, what was the point of all that? Like, that seemed like God was intervening to get me out of here, and it didn't help my life get any better at all. Like, has God forgotten about me? I thought that I did what was right, and I'm still here in jail for something a crime I didn't commit in the first place. I would be frustrated. But then, 2 years later, Pharaoh had two dreams that troubled him. He desperately searched for someone on his staff who could interpret them, but no one could. And that's when the cupbearer remembered Joseph. So Pharaoh called for Joseph, who interpreted the dream with incredible accuracy. And as a result, eventually Joseph was made second in charge of all of Egypt. And under Joseph's leadership, Egypt survived a terrible famine, would eventually put Egypt in a position to save Joseph's family and other people from his homeland who were suffering from the famine. It was 2 full years before the cupbearer even remembered Joseph. And even when Joseph was promoted to a position of incredible power, he was still living in a foreign land. So it wasn't like Joseph was able to go home as a free man. And Joseph was still second in command under Pharaoh, which meant that if Pharaoh was having a bad day and decided that he wanted Joseph dead, he could snap his fingers and make it happen. So no, this did not make Joseph's life perfect, not even close. But when we see the big picture and understand the context to this backstory, we see that Joseph's challenging circumstances uniquely position him to do something great. Joseph, however, still had to wait 2 years. All the good things that happened in Joseph's world didn't make those bad things okay, and they didn't make those 2 years seem to go any faster. Being promoted to second in command didn't undo the challenges he faced leading up to that, but at the same time, those difficult circumstances positioned him and prepared him for something great, something only he could do. And the same is true for you and me. Difficult things can happen in your life. And it's important to remember that God does not cause hard things to happen. Because of sin, things happen that aren't fair, that don't make sense, and sometimes things that you should never have to deal with. But God can take those things and use them for something so much greater than you can see. And we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him, who have been called according to His purpose. It may not seem to make things all better, and it may not even make sense yet, but God is in the business of taking our hurt, difficulties, and pain and giving them a purpose and giving them a meaning. In other words, when you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. Let me say that again. When you don't know what to do, remember that your problems can position you for a purpose. This doesn't mean we can tie a bow on all challenging things. It doesn't mean everything will be fixed and go back to being how it was before everything bad happened. It just means that we can leave room for God to tell a new story in our difficult circumstances. It means we can have confidence in God's ability to redeem things, to know that good can come from bad. It means that the bad stuff doesn't get the last word. The worst things we experience aren't the end of our story. In fact, they could be part of something more, another greater purpose that we wouldn't have been able to see otherwise. So when we go through pain and we can't see the purpose yet, here are some things that I believe can help us get a bigger perspective. And the first thing is to remember that no one else has your life story. Your difficult circumstances are not fun, but they are unique to you. They put you in a position to learn and to grow and discover things that no one else can. God is using your tough stuff to shape you into the beautiful, unique person that He wants you to become. And that's not going to make it any easier, but it may give you a perspective outside of the pain. And another thing is to remember that your story can interact with others. Although no one else has your life story, many people do face similar circumstances. And listen, you could be a voice to help them through their own challenges and pain, a help you would not have been able to give if you hadn't gone through it yourself. So when you go through family drama, you can help people who are going through family drama. When you go through a hard breakup, you can understand how someone else feels when they're going through a hard breakup. When you deal with a sickness, an illness, or an injury, you can relate to people who are going through the same thing. When you have doubts and questions in your faith, you can show grace and compassion to people who are asking questions of their own. You can become a person who looks around, sees other people's struggles, and says, "Oh, you feel that? Yeah, me too. Oh, you've experienced that? Yep, I've been there. Can I tell you my experience? Can I share kind of what helped bring me through that?" The truth is, the next best thing to having something fixed for us is having someone who has been through it too. Having someone who has been through it walk alongside our mess with us. And look, when we can be that voice of encouragement for someone else because of our experiences, that is a real win. One that gives our pain some perspective and some purpose. Do not miss the power in that. Joseph went through pain that felt pointless. But when we see his backstory, we see that God used his problems and positioned him for a purpose. His unique experiences put him in a role that only he could fill. But it didn't feel good in the moment. No, it was difficult. But he held on to God. He relied on God's strength, and he trusted that God saw the bigger picture. And he allowed the struggles and difficulties of Joseph's life to uniquely position him to be used by God. It didn't mean they went away, but it meant he knew there was more to what he was experiencing than what he saw where he was. And the same is true for you, and the same is true for me. And listen, the same is true for the people around us.
Hey everybody, it's week 4 of our series of what to do when you don't know what to do. Before we start today, I want to just say that next week we're going to be on pause, or we're going to take a break for a week. Next week's Father's Day, you know? Happy Father's Day, Dad. You're awesome. Oh, and my father-in-law. Happy Father's Day as well. You guys are both great, and I'm so happy to have you in my life. So, after morning regular service, go hang out with your dad, right? Go spend some time with the important men in your life, you know? I think that's a good way to spend
a day for sure to honor them and to show them their value. I like the message today because it talked about like, well, dude, I don't know if his favorite movie was Kung Fu Panda. Is that seriously someone's favorite movie? It's a good movie, good trilogy, whatever. But someone's favorite? I don't know. I was skeptical. I don't know, dude. I did like it though because it talked about like the backstory and how that plays so well into people's stories in a movie and how they use it. I think that even though we don't track our own backstories, that they're still so we can easily relate to those because we do experience situations like that where maybe we don't see it right away, but when we look back, we're like, whoa, that sucked. Like that was hard for me, or I went through that and now I'm here. And that is technically a backstory, but we would just not call it a backstory because it's our life, you know? So super relatable, super easy to kind of picture. And then when we go into the life of Joseph, man, they're hitting it home with the life of Joseph, like really putting it into perspective for us so that it like he has really had to face every situation that we're dealing with, especially today when you look at his backstory and you look at the things he experienced. And anyways, yeah, sorry, man. Just like Joseph, I think that, well, they don't talk about it a whole lot, but I'm sure he often wondered what to do with his pain and struggle. Like we see later how he deals with it and how he uses it, but I think in a moment he was probably just like, man, this kind of sucks. So the story talked about the cupbearer, right, who gets back in and is like good with Pharaoh again, and then he just forgets about Joseph. Joseph must have been like, whoa, like, what? What is the point of that? I'm here in jail, in pain. I'm here, like, just struggling. I helped this guy out, and now I'm just left here? So I felt God helped me, but for nothing? I just think that if that happened to some of us today, that we would think that God, first of all, God's not on our side. God doesn't care about us, especially if we're like, hey, I did what I was supposed to do. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. Or we would just think that was wrong, and we shouldn't have done it. We would regret doing it. We would regret helping the guy because it never worked out well for us. I feel like that's such a, like, normal human response to be like, this sucks, and I don't, like, it never helped me, God must not want me, or care about me, or care about my situation. But then 2 years later, 2 years, I think we would wait a week at most, 2 years later for Joseph, and things start to really turn around for him. The cupbearer finds like, oh, wow, I know a guy who knows dreams. Boom, boom, all of a sudden, Joseph is second in command under Pharaoh. Now, like the guy said, I was like, man, yeah, I guess his life didn't really go back to being perfect. Like, he didn't really get released and into this, like, being able to go back to his home. But things definitely really turned around. He was no longer the same type of prisoner he was before, you know, and he had a lot of control, and he was able to end up being able to help his family, which is super awesome. But he had to wait 2 years. I think just the fact of waiting 2 years doesn't seem like a long time. You just say, oh, it's just a couple of years. But when you have to live every day of 2 years, that feels long, you know? That feels like a long time. The things that Joseph went through, the pain and the hurt, I think it really prepared him for what he was going into and the type of leadership he was going to have to give. It definitely probably made him more of a graceful leader and an understanding leader. And really probably compassionate to the weak, I guess, because he'd been in that situation for so long in his life. I guess when I look at my life like that and try and like think of like how we can practically apply that, I think about how his life prepared him to do what he had to do, but it really honestly depended on how he responded to how his life was going. So he could have responded in any amount of ways, made decisions that put him in a completely other direction, but he kept doing what he thought was right and responded to it in like, I'm still going to do this. I can make it through, I guess, is the vibe that we get. He just holds to his integrity like we learned about last week, and he just like keeps pushing forward, even in the face of no help and no timeline. He responded properly, and it really let him be prepared for what was next. The pain we go through really gives us purpose. Like personally, I think about that in my life, and you know, I've gone through, like I mentioned before, some deaths in my life, and did I really want to go through that? It still affects me to this day, okay? Like we know, I'm in a lot better place, you know, and it doesn't affect me nearly the same as it did, sorry. But now when someone comes to me with that kind of a problem, or, oh, hey, they're hurting, it's like so much of I can relate with them on such a different level now. I struggle with like some mental health things and whatever, and like, so that's hard to go through daily, right? Like, mental health is like one of those things you look back and you're like, it's one of those things that when you look back and it seems like it was a short time, like a couple years, but going through the day after day with like some like that kind of pain is very difficult and very challenging. Similar to, I guess, if someone had some kind of like physical pain that bothers them every day, it's like, it's very hard. But then it's like, and you often look at like, okay, is this really preparing me for anything, or does this just suck? And the answer is like yes and yes. So like, it is preparing you for something, but yes, it also still does suck, and that's okay. Like, it's gonna be painful, but it does prepare you. I've had people share with me some pretty dark parts of their life, and it hasn't really fazed me because I've gone through some of my own dark times, and now I can be so empathetic towards those people and help walk them through those situations. My heart's cry is to help others, and it's part of my personality. It's something that I live for, is to help others. And so if any pain that I go through can help me help others, then bring it on. Something I wanted to mention in this series is that they've always really made a good point of saying every week, no matter what lesson it is, they say, hey, it's not always going to feel right. Hey, it might not always play out right. Oh, you might not feel like God's with you. You might feel like you're alone still. But it's still worth it to make the right decision. It's still beneficial and still important, and God is with you. He's still there even though you don't feel it. And when you don't know what to do and you do what's right, it still might not go well. You might not notice that God is, or feel that God is there, but He is, and He's for you, and He wants to help you. And look, Joseph had to wait 2 years, and that's just 2 years for this part. That's not even the rest of the stuff that he went through. But God was always with him, and God always wanted the best for him, and he made the right decisions, and so many times it looked like that was the wrong idea, but in the end it turned out to be awesome. The big ones for me, I guess, are the mental health one and the help with death, because death is a scary one for people sometimes if they never went through it before. But to be able to help them go through it, does that mean I wanted to go through it myself? No. Does it mean I want it to be as traumatic as it was? No. Did it feel good? No. Did it bother me for a long time? Yes. You know? And I'm doing okay, even though I went through those things, right? I'm doing good. But it didn't feel that way always, and it took a long time to get me there. But God was still with me the whole time. You know? So I'm saying that was Joseph's story in the Bible, but it's real, and I've literally lived it in my life. That's kind of what I'm trying to say, and I think you can live it in your life as well. Doesn't matter how old you are. You're going through stuff right now, and what you're going through, you know what? Someone older might look at you and say, hey, that's stupid. You're not going to even care about that when you get older. Doesn't matter. It's important to you now, you know? It's important to you now, and it's important now. God does want good for you. And just because we make the right decision doesn't mean our life is going to be perfect. It's more about your character and who you're becoming. By following this story and following the lessons we're learning, it helps us to know what to do when we don't know what to do. And it's not about changing and making everything perfect in our lives. It's about making us better people. And these stories are trying to emphasize that. Joseph went through the huge trials, almost died, put into slavery. He went from free man to slave to prisoner. But he kept his character intact, and it benefited him so much. And he was able to go to his family without bitterness. Like, he went there with pain and kind of share with them, but he actually helped them. These things aren't just trying to help you with specific moments. I love that kind of stuff. Like, so I did, I've done counseling in the past, and the best things I liked were things that not just helped me deal with situation A or situation B. It helped me deal with what I was feeling in those moments, and so now I can apply it to other moments. And that's why I like the series so much. So, I hope you grabbed something out of it. I hope you benefited from it a little bit. Thanks for joining us in this whole journey of talking about Joseph and what to do when you don't know what to do. So again, we're going to take a pause next week. Going to take some time to honor the dads in our life, and then we're going to pick it up the next week after that. So stay tuned for that. Again, if you want to connect with me in any way, I'm on all social media platforms except Twitter. I'm on there, but man, I don't use it. So probably not the best. I mean, some of you might say I don't use any of it. Either way, I'm there. If you guys want to do some kind of like Zoom call or Netflix party or something like that, let me know and we'll do it. Like, we'll have some fun with that. And if you have any questions about our group or about I guess the fall kind of is unknown for everyone now. But I mean, to talk about any of that kind of stuff, you can. And so, yeah, guys, peace.